Hello, nurturing parents, and welcome back to the Nurturing Parent Podcast. Today we have part 2 of this 3-part series that I'm going to call the Amma series because these are the 3 things that Amma is constantly preaching about. So today's topic is why reading, and Amma is going to give you exactly that. Why is reading so important, how profound it is in our children's development, and why we should be implementing this in our everyday lives. So if you aren't yet, that's fine. Neither have I been. And that's exactly why we are bringing you this conversation today. So stay tuned to hear how you can enhance so many things in your children's development. And we're so excited to have you here. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Hey, Mama. Welcome to the Nurturing Parent Podcast. Do you want to end the constant battles for bath time? Do you find yourself emotionally exhausted at the end of the day? Do you wake up with big hopes for a smooth day of fun with your little ones, only to face an early morning meltdown because you peeled their banana the wrong way?
Silly you.
Silly you.
Hey, I'm Serena. I am a mama of 2 little ones, and as a new mama, I constantly question myself. I wanted to make sure I was raising respectful kids while also building a strong bond with them. But I discovered that I had to unlearn my ideas that punishment was the way. With Lisa's encouragement, I've been practicing a respectful and gentle parenting approach, which is strengthening our bond as a family.
And hi, I'm Lisa. Amma means grandmother in Icelandic. I am a mama and an Amma. And I have over 40 years of experience in childcare and parent coaching. And I am so excited to share the knowledge I've gained over these years with you.
Together in this podcast, each week we will explore some easy to implement skills you can add to your parenting tool belt to help you create a happy, thriving family.
In the great green room, there was a telephone and a red balloon and a picture of... Do you know what storybook that's from?
Good night, Moon.
Yes. One of my favorite of all time stories to read with young children. Goodnight Moon by Margaret Wise Brown and pictures by Clement Hurd. So we are going to talk about the importance of reading to our babies, our toddlers, our children, ourselves. The importance of reading. It's another topic I'm really excited about.
This whole series is all Amma, and she's super excited, and we love it.
I'm so excited. And it comes from my training as an early childhood educator in college. I kind of came by this honestly, but in college it was reinforced the importance of singing and music with our children, the importance of reading to and with our children, the importance of art and creativity, and why those things are important. So I wanted to take the beginning of this year, 3 mini series of 3 episodes: why music, why reading, and why art. And here we are in the middle with why reading. So let me ask you, Mama Serena, how much would you say you read to your children? They're 1.5 and 3.5, around those ages. What would you say?
Unfortunately, I know it's not as much as it should be, but honestly, I probably read to my kids maybe 3 times a week.
Okay. Thank you for your honesty. I love that. And I'm betting that you're not alone. And I appreciate you not sort of glossing over that, because I'm betting that you, listener, if you are not somebody who reads to your baby or child every day, it kind of feels like there's some camaraderie there with Mama Serena. So My encouragement through today's whole episode will be read more with your children. And here's a whole bunch of reasons why. Before I get into the reasons why, the benefits of reading to our children every day, I just want to say it's never too late to start reading to your child every day. Even if your child is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and you're just hearing this now, and you haven't been a parent who reads to your child every day, start now. And I get that so many of you are busy working parents. Either both parents are working, or you're a single or solo parent and you have to work. And it's a lot. But even if it's one storybook at bedtime, please read one storybook at bedtime every night. Either you, or if you're lucky enough to have a partner parenting with you, or a grandparent or somebody, make sure your child is being read to every day. It's my deepest wish.
And I'd like to just add to that, because I am the mama that's busy and working, and I get home, I'm exhausted. And I said, unfortunately, I probably read 3 times a week because I know I should be reading more to my kids. It's just not, I guess, a priority, and it should be. And we're here listening to this podcast. We're here doing this podcast because this is something we care about. And maybe listening to this right now is not going to change it. But before, I really wasn't reading to my kids, and we had a conversation about the book basket. And so I did
Way in the
start.
beginning.
Yeah. And so I did start. I learned how important it was, and maybe it just fell off the charts a little bit. Um, and it also just takes a lot of repetition. There's a lot of things that we repeat here all the time that I'm still not doing, that I know I should be doing. And it just takes that repetition and that practice and knowing better so we can do better. And yeah,
Yes.
so don't kick yourself in the butt if you're not reading every day, but being here and understanding why we need to read every day is the first step.
Yes. I love all that. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I love you so much.
I love you too.
um, and thanks for reminding us about the book basket episode. Can you pop in the show notes which number episode that is?
Of
It was
course.
way early in the beginning. I think it might
Yeah.
have been our New Year's episode that first year.
Mm-hmm.
So a book basket, really quickly, is where you keep your children's books. So I just want to start with, what books do you read to your children? Um, if you have no idea what to read to your children, I recommend your library, and your librarian is a fantastic resource. Use your library, go to your librarian and say, I want to start reading to my infant, and it feels weird because what is an infant even going to understand? Or I want to start reading to my toddler or my older child. Can you recommend some books? And just if you can, just be honest and say, like, I'm not a reader. I haven't been a reader to my child, and I just heard a podcast that said I should be, so now I want to start. And how do you recommend I start? And Serena, I also want to point out for you and for our listeners who may be kind of in the same realm and the same boat that you're in, of not being a reader to your child or with your child. You didn't grow up being read to, right?
Yeah.
By a parent. When we did the book basket episode, I remember asking you about your memories of being read to as a child. And you said, oh, I loved it when my teacher would read a story out loud to us. And so you would have been in grade 1 or 2, or, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And my heart kind of broke for you a little bit because there's this beautiful bonding, this beautiful connection that happens when you sit on your parents' lap, or you cozy in beside them on the sofa, or you curl in together at night and your parent reads a story to you, like Goodnight Moon. and your child will develop favorites, and you will go crazy, parents, because your child will want their favorite story night after night after night, and maybe 2 or 3 times the same story.
Oh
Good
yeah.
night, moon again. Good
Yes,
night, moon again. Good
it's
night,
with
moon again.
Good Night Moon. Yeah. Andrea wants to
Yeah.
read it over and over and over.
And that is how children learn, same as how we learn, through repetition. So they're learning. It's also when they, and I'll just say these parts about how to read to your children. When they ask for the same books over and over, and you're like going crazy, could we just read something that's going to engage my brain a little more? Let's just be there for your child, your young child, and know that that repetition and knowing exactly word for word what happens next in the story, to the point where if you try to change it up, they're going to correct you by age 3 or 4, and you start trying to say, in the great green room, there was a telephone and a purple balloon. No, the balloon was red. And what it is that feeling that we talk about so much here, that is the core of the nurturing parent: safety and security. So when something is repetitious, that bedtime routine that always has a story at the end of the routine, just before the light goes off and just before the lullaby, the routine is safe and secure. Same thing with a story that is read over and over and over. It's safe, it's secure. I know what's going to happen next. So it's a very important thing to remember. Um, so I want to just divert a little bit and go into why is it so important. And then I'll come back at the very end and talk a little bit more about how to choose what books and how to actually read those stories to your infants and children. Just because in some of my research, I came across the American pediatrics recommendations. I didn't look up the Canadian ones, and I am Canadian, but I'm sure in the Western world, most pediatric associations are going to be on the same page of saying, how early should I be reading to my child? From newborn on. That's what's recommended. A daily story, at least one, every day, whether it's first thing in the morning when you wake up and you have a snuggle time and you're not racing out the door to go in 5 different directions, or if that's your world, then at night as part of your bedtime routine. Start on day 1 or day 2 or a week after you deliver that baby. Actually, they are recommending you start while the baby is in the womb, because the baby hears your voice, of course. And the interesting thing about reading to our children, rather than the talking that we also recommend, that you talk with your child all day, not all day, but what, okay, mama's going to pick you up now, we're going to go in the bedroom and lay you down on the bed so I can change that wet diaper, and let's get a dry diaper. So you're talking through what's happening in their world and your world together. But aside from talking, actually reading words on the page, we use different inflections of our voice, right? We put different emotion in. There's another of my favorite books right here. It's called The Runaway Bunny, and it's also by Margaret Wise Brown. Once there was a little bunny who wanted to run away. So he said to his mother, I am running away. If you run away, said his mother, I will run after you, for you are my little bunny. So do you hear all the inflections in my voice? There's emotions in the words that I use. Whereas when I'm talking to you, those emotions are going to be relayed a little bit differently than when I'm reading a story. So both kinds of both ways that our children hear our voices are really, really important for different reasons.
That's interesting because that's something I had to work on when I started reading to my kids because I'm not good with that. I feel like I'm very monotone and I didn't really know where to make those
Mm.
inflections until I had to read it over and over and over and over again.
Aha. It's by repetition that we learn. I love that. This is such a great to have you in this conversation is just gives it so much more depth. So thank you. That's great. Um, I want to say that the top benefits for reading out loud to our children is that reading is another superfood for the brain. That back and forth interaction that we engage in with our children when we read and when they interact with a story. Now, a brand new infant or a very young child, very young baby isn't going to interact a lot, but you can watch for signs with your very young babies. If you start reading a story and you're holding them in your arm and you start reading a story, see if they're calming, see if they're kind of settling in and their body's relaxing. Or maybe they start cooing or babbling a bit. Those are signs that they are engaging with the story. So that back and forth interaction is really incredible because it causes the brain to wire new pathways in the development of the brain pathways is optimized with that back and forth, which we also get from conversations, which we also get from singing. So those are all really important brain superfoods. The other thing that's really core is that when we hold or snuggle or lay beside our children, when we read to them, it builds that sense of connection, a sense of security and safety, love. It imbues a trust in us because it's just a deep, deep connection time, right? And having books be there while we have that connection time that's so deep and so beautiful creates an association between those cozy, loving, happy, secure feelings and a love of lifelong learning. Books are directly associated with learning. Now, some of you might want to try to argue with Amma that books are going out. We've got people reading to children on YouTube. We've got, audiobooks. Yes, we do.
We've
But
got
there
Miss
have,
Miss Rachel teaching them how to speak and
I don't know who Miss Rachel is.
oh
I may not want to know.
no, you don't want to know.
Okay, this is a YouTube.
But she's
Uh-huh.
she's a teacher and some might argue like she would be the most appropriate YouTube for your kids to watch.
What I'm going to tell you is that there have been studies done about reading actual books with your child or giving your infant or child YouTube to listen to books. They don't even compare with what happens in the brain activity when a live human, the mom, the dad, the auntie, the uncle, the older sibling, even the grandparent, the daycare provider, the teacher, when a human being reads to your child, and hopefully it's you on a regular basis, the brain activity is massive. I don't have the percentages, but it's massive compared to listening to a device, somebody else reading. They have done incredible studies about this and watched the brain. So don't think that you are quote unquote reading to your child if you're putting them in with a device to listen to. That's fine too, as an addition to you reading daily to your child, not as a replacement. Okay. What our reading does is the brain food feeds that growing brain those neuro pathways are developing like crazy because feeling safe and secure enhances the development of neural pathways. That's when the brain is going ping, 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 and all the synapses are firing. Our babies' brains from 0 to 3 develop 90%. 90% of our brain development happens in those first 3 years.
Wow.
The plasticity of the brain in those first 3 years is so great. So that means it's very, if you think of maybe an elastic band would be a good example. Plasticity means it's pliable. It can move, it can grow, it can change. The plasticity of that young child's brain is such that it will never be again. The more we can feed that brain through reading to them, through singing with them, through moving their bodies, through open-ended play and art activities, all those things, those are the best precursors to your child doing well in school and doing well in life as an adult. So here are a few of the specific benefits of reading daily to your child. An obvious one is the increase in vocabulary. When we talk to our children every day and when we read to our children every day, the increase in vocabulary is massive. There was a study done in the 80s that has been talked about a lot. And it talks about the 30 million word gap between children who are not read to in those first 3 years, 3 to 5 to 7 years, and children who are read to daily. 30 million words less for the children who are not read to. That's profound. Some people have argued against that study, that there were very few people in the study, and there were other factors that weren't taken into account. But even if it's 10 million, even if it's 5 million, like that's a lot of words.
It is. One of my goals actually for this year is to learn how to articulate myself better, and that's always been a very big insecurity of mine.
Mm-hmm.
In English and in Spanish is feeling like I have a very constricted vocabulary, and it's very frustrating. It's hit my self-esteem.
That's really interesting, because now as I go through this list of the benefits of what our children get when we read to them every day, you can hear it from yourself as a mama who's going to learn the importance of reading to your child every day. But also, you were a child that was not read to as a young child. So your vocabulary, you already feel like it's limited. And I'm guessing it probably is. It's not a downer to you about like that I'm saying to you, like, oh, your vocabulary is so low. I don't actually notice that, but you notice it, you feel it inside, right? And it's so interesting because yes, self-esteem can be affected. So let me go through my list here, and definitely pop in and let me know anything that really resonates with you, Serena. Obviously, reading to our children stimulates their mind. All those neural pathways are developing. The mind is stimulated on so many levels. It also really enhances memory development. And that's one of the things about reading over and over and over again, the same books. the memory, like your child. I read to the little 3-year-old that I had in my care last year a book that he requested out of my basket of books. And I started reading it, and he started reading the same, like all the words. And then I said, "Oh, you know this story really well." He wasn't reading it. He had memorized the story because he'd heard it so many times. And it was a relatively simple story. And that's what they love. They're called picture books, big pictures, few words. And he, quote unquote, read the entire story to
Wow.
me with all the inflections and, all the
Aw.
things. And he was just over 3 years old. So this can be what you experience when you read to your children a lot. So yes, it develops, it really enhances memory development. It can also help prevent cognitive decline in later life. So that cognitive development, that intellectual development that's happening with those neural pathways, that is showing in longitudinal studies and studies of elderly people that those people who were read to a lot as children and were then avid readers through their lives don't have the same level of cognitive decline in their later life. That's cool. The brain maintains its functionality much longer because reading engages the mind. It's like a workout. It's kind of like a workout for the mind to listen to a story. It can increase empathy. We hear stories even in our, even in the very hungry caterpillar who goes around trying to find all the food to eat all the food to fill up, and it was still hungry, and then it ate all the sweets and the chocolate cake and all the things, and then it had a tummy ache. And stories that are written for young children have, like all stories, they have a problem that needs to be overcome. And when the child hears the story and sees that the problem or the struggle has a resolution in the end, it helps to increase a child's empathy. Reading to our children enhances stress reduction. It's so calming. Half an hour of reading, they've done studies about this too, even as little as half an hour of reading a day can lower our blood pressure, calm our heart rate to the same effect that doing yoga or meditation can do. That's incredible.
That is incredible, and it's interesting, and it reminds me of when I was being read to in school and the whole experience. I just remember how they would turn the pages, how they grasp the page, how they lick their finger to turn the page,
Yes.
the way my teacher's arm would jiggle when she would turn the page, the way her teeth, and like it was just such an experience when I was being read to. And
You
it
were fully engaged.
yeah, it was like
Mm-hmm.
a meditation because I just remember like it just felt good analyzing those little things about my teacher while she was reading, and it was very calming. And
That's really cool. I love that. You were very present
mm-hmm.
in those moments right then. That's cool. Um, Reading out loud to our children can help actually with anxiety or depression. Even the young storybooks can inspire a sense of belonging and a sense of hope. Lots of books are have inclusiveness somewhere in either the text or the illustrations or both. So inclusiveness with differences in our worlds, whether it's you have two moms instead of a mom and a dad, or one mom or one dad, or all the different ways of inclusiveness, different colored skin,
One book that you
disability.
love, yeah, with the wheelchair and the elevator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's Going Up, it's
Mm-hmm.
called. I forget the title of the name of the author at the moment. It's a beautiful book of inclusiveness. So yes, it can, and reading to our children can inspire that sense of belonging. Reading to our children also increases their attention span. It enhances our ability to focus. And through those things can develop discipline, self-discipline in ourselves, in our children. Reading to our children also models the pause in conversing in the world or being in the world, the pause to question, to think, to wonder. So, when I read a book to a child, especially if they've heard it before, but even that first time, in the great green room, there was a telephone and a red, and they'll see there's a red balloon in that picture. And you can just pause for that moment. And you can say, do you see something red? This is one thing I want to say to you, those of you who are not used to reading to your children. You don't have to read every single word of the story. You don't even have to finish a particular book. And you definitely don't have to read word for word unless your children have got to the point where they've heard it so many times, they will correct you if you say it differently. But in those earliest times of reading those books, stop and say, oh, do you see a red balloon? I see a red balloon. Or your very young baby might point, in the great green room, there was a telephone and a red, and the baby might point, yes, a red balloon. So you're reinforcing what they're seeing and what they're learning. So that pausing to think, to wonder, asking questions while you're reading those simple stories. Brown bear, what do you see? You turn the page and there's a red bird. And by the time the child has heard that story once, they'll know, I see a red bird. And you pause before turning that page, right? So all of those things can engage your child in the act of story being read to, story time. By the time your child is 1 year old, if you've been reading daily to your baby, they will have heard all the sounds in your language. The more stories that you read to them, the more words they are exposed to. The social and emotional development enhanced by all the nuances of your voice. All those concerns and all that excitement and all that curiosity comes through in your voice. Like Serena, when you read them over and over and over, you learn where to put those nuances, right? And I want you to encourage your children to read those stories with you. Don't sit them down and think they're going to sit there and watch, or listen, but actually have them up on your lap and start, seeing if that baby is cooing or babbling or calming down, and see if that toddler wants to reach out and point. And even if it's in the middle of that story, oh, I see you found mittens hanging up in that, and you were wearing your mittens today. So follow your toddler's lead and encourage them to talk about what they're pointing to, and you talk about what they're pointing to. Yes, I do see that red truck in the picture. That kind of thing. Let them hold the books. So you might want to get those, what we call board books for your infants and very young children. board books are fabulous because they can put them in their mouths. Those young ones that want to mouth everything, that's fine. What I don't encourage is children to throw books or stomp on books. Books are very special and we need to treat them with respect. But those very young infants and toddlers, get them the board books so they can touch them and hold them and mouth them if they need to. And, just for a minute and say, okay, let's look at the picture together, that kind of thing, right? So there's a whole lot of reasons why reading to our children every day is so important. And I hope that this makes a difference to how much you are reading with your children. What do you think, Serena? Did that make a difference?
It did make a difference, and just this conversation makes me, because we do have a book basket, is to have 3 in that basket, because we have tried filling it with like 7 and then it just gets kind of messy or it gets lost, and or it's like, let me read that one, okay, and then she'll try to close the book, and then it becomes something frustrating for me.
Mm-hmm.
So noticing what hasn't worked in the past and saying, let's choose 3 books to keep in the book basket and keep it right next to the bed,
Mm-hmm.
and every night before bed
Yeah.
just reading however many she wants.
Yeah. And however many she chooses might depend on how late you're getting into bed.
Mm-hmm.
Tonight, there's only time for one story. Which is your favorite choice right now tonight? Right? I love that. Keep that book basket beside your bed. Have them choose the story before they brush their teeth, so that by the time you climb into bed, they don't have to make that choice, because by now you just want their brain calming down.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is something I would love to do in a Zoom room with you all. I would love to read a story with you as your mama, your amma, and really show you some of those nuances, because for me as a preschool teacher, it just comes naturally. And for me as a child who was read to, by the time I was being a babysitter in my teenage years, it came naturally. For those of you who weren't read to, I get that there's a big question mark here. Why would I read to my infant? They don't understand these words. Because you're giving them language, because you're creating connection, because their brain is developing and it's hungry for the food that reading is. So I would love to do this in a Zoom room. Let us know in our DMs or our direct messages on Instagram or Facebook, or email if you want to jump in a Zoom room with us. I want to. Okay. I hope that really inspires you. And please know that it's never too late and it's never too early to start reading every day to your little one. We love you. And we would love, if you love this episode as much as Amma obviously did, please consider taking a moment right now and giving us that 5-star review and writing us a review that shares with other parents what you're getting from this podcast. It really, really helps us to come up into the thread and the flow of other people's vision so they can find the nurturing parent as well. We would really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
All right, parents. So to dive into my gems from this episode, number 1 is the fact that our children's brain develops 90% from the age of 0 to 3. I think that's incredible, and it kind of scared me, because I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I introduced my kids to in those years? But it's also very eye-opening and hopefully is encouraging to get us to start reading every day, because these are the most important years. My second gem is all the benefits that reading provides for our kids. such as increasing their vocabulary, enhancing their memory, preventing cognitive decline, increasing empathy, their sense of belonging and hope. And it enhances their ability to focus, which a lot of kids struggle with. So if we want to help that, let's read to them and make that a priority. And also enhancing their discipline. My third gem is that it's never too late and it's never too early to start. So with one easy step of taking one book a day and spending that time to read together, I think would be pivotal in their development and in your relationship with them. So I'm so grateful for learning all this, and just knowing all this information, I think, is great for us to have in our back pockets, and hopefully it does change our intentions and our behaviors around reading. And a quick funny story, right after I recorded this episode with Emma, I went downstairs to grab a tea before we continued working. And just as I got downstairs, my daughter had 3 books in her hands and was like, "Mommy, can you read me this story?" And how could I deny her after learning all the benefits that reading provides for my beautiful little girl? So I sat down and read to her those 3 books, even though I did feel a little anxiety in my heart, like I need to get back to the computer, I need to finish work, blah, blah, blah. But there was no way I could say no to her. And I thought it was pretty funny how that happened. And I thought that was pretty amazing how that worked out, because I just learned all the benefits and literally walked downstairs right after that conversation. And she was like, "Mommy, can you please read to me?" And I just thought it was perfect. So if you're with your kids, if you're around your kids right now, I encourage you to just stop and go pick out a book with them and just sit and read. Ignore that little voice in your head that's saying, "Go finish the work, go finish the work, go finish the laundry, go finish the dishes, start cooking." And just read. All right? Love you guys, and we'll see you next week.
I want to sing with you. I want to dance with you. I want to laugh with you. Oh, how I love to be with you. I do. I do. Such a short time we've been together.